Welcome back. All right, news of the day video for all you fine people for your Thursday, March the 21st. Hey, spring's here. About time. Feels like winter took a while. Anyways, we're starting things off talking about Tom Wilson. So last night in the game against Toronto, pretty reckless stick swing. And I'm saying reckless, not vicious, not like premeditated. It was just reckless. Reckless use of the stick by Tom Wilson. And it's interesting because, as I mentioned last night in the review as well, Wilson's done a good job of not really stirring up controversy this year. There haven't been all these hits that we would very often see as being maybe on the line or over the line. So it does feel like this is a little bit out of character for him this season, but he does have a track record. So he's been offered an in-person hearing, meaning that the suspension could be 6 games or longer. And it also means that he can show up in person and discuss the play and what he was thinking, and maybe talk George Parros into dropping the amount of games that Parros might be thinking of right now for him. Again, for Wilson, because it's Tom Wilson, I totally understand why this is in person. It was a weird looking play. Because again, it's reckless. It's like, what is he thinking? I was even in watching the game in real time. I rewound the TV to show Yvonne. I was like, what was he thinking here? So again, I totally agree with it being a suspension. We'll see how many games he gets and what his defense is, what he was thinking in that moment, because he showed remorse immediately for what he'd done. I just love to know the thought process in that moment. And again, I'm sure the Department of Player Safety will be asking him something very similar. Dan Vladar of the Calgary Flames will not be playing for the Calgary Flames for the rest of this season. He's having a season-ending hip surgery. So, of course, with hips, you got to be really concerned, and with goaltenders as well. Lateral movement is really, really important if you're a goaltender. It's important if you're a forward or a defenseman as well, of course. We've talked about how hip surgery can be, one of those things to keep your eye on. But hopefully for Vladar, everything's 100% once the surgery is done. The good news for the Flames, Markstrom has been cleared. He's set to return, and Wolf should be the backup between now and the end of the season. So you'll get an idea for Markstrom and Wolf as the tandem the rest of the way, how they'd perform. And we'll see what the Flames do in the offseason, because it looks like Wolf's ready. And so do you keep Markstrom or do you keep Vladar? Do you flip one? Do you flip the other? Odds are we won't see Markstrom and Vladar as the tandem for the Flames next season. Again, just because Wolf's forced himself into the conversation. So John Tortorella sits the captain, which people are going to ask you about it. So going into tonight's game, it's expected he's going to be a healthy scratch again. And I would agree with this for the simple fact that Philadelphia won their last game. Coaches like to keep the lineup the same, going from one win to the next game. And so odds are Couturier is probably not playing tonight. But when asked about it, his answer was, I'm not talking about Sean. So that's the thing, though. If you're going to bench the player, I think you have to be willing to answer questions. I'm totally on side with Tortorella at most times. In this case, though, all he had to say was whether or not he was going to play him. And again, the question leading to this was, has he shown you what you're looking for in order to get back in the lineup? And his answer is, no, I'm not talking about him. And I do wonder if Sean went personally and asked him, Coach, have I done enough? If Tortorella would look at him and go, I'm not talking about Sean. Talking about him like he's not there. Anyways, we'll see how this all goes, because it does feel like if the Flyers make the playoffs, we're going to look back at this and say, smart move. You get the attention of the room. If they fall out of the hunt for a playoff spot in the last couple of weeks and there's the turmoil, it may be a completely different conversation, right? But Couturier clearly unhappy with the situation, and we're not going to get much in the way of answers from Tortorella. And again, it doesn't sound like the player has either. So this will continue to play itself out. Roy for the Montreal Canadiens. Sadly, he is out indefinitely. He's to be evaluated in Montreal. He was injured on Tuesday against the Oilers, so he returned yesterday to Montreal for evaluation. We'll see what that looks like, but anytime I hear out indefinitely and we've got less than a month left in the schedule, I read that as probably season ending. Roy's played well. I think Roy's earned himself at least a look at a regular job for the Montreal Canadiens next season. Maybe a spot on their third line, right? If they start showing that improvement next year, it's going to be young guys like Roy that get them there. So all the best to him and his recovery. Torrey Krug is expected to miss the game versus the Ottawa Senators tonight. He has a lower body injury. He's been up and down this year. Started out down, had a really good run there. A little bit more up and down lately, as points totals fluctuating wildly during the season, but it doesn't sound like Krug's going to be out for that long. Wallman won't play for the Detroit Red Wings tonight against the New York Islanders, and Larkin is seen as a game time decision. It does feel like if they can get Larkin back, that might help to spark the team. And this game against the Islanders tonight, I don't think we can overstate how important that is to the Detroit Red Wings and to the New York Islanders. This should be an intense game. Might see a fight or two, and it will be interesting to see who comes out victorious in that one. And it's the most impactful game potentially on the playoffs until the next one. So that's where I love this time of year, is that we get all hyped up for certain games, and then a few days later, or sometimes the next day, we'll have a game that we can just get as much hype out of. So we'll see how things go for the Wings, but getting Larkin back would be huge if that in fact is the case. The Columbus Blue Jackets have been without a GM for a while, and apparently the list of candidates is still pretty long. They're not getting into exactly who they've got their eye on necessarily, but it's come out that they want an experienced GM, which makes sense. The Columbus Blue Jackets, there's a good team there, and I've said this recently. I've said it multiple times this season. I think there's a good team there. It's just finding the right guy who can bring that out. Find the right general manager, and if they're looking for somebody with experience, they'll look for somebody, I would think, who's shown before that they can turn a team around. So maybe that'll lead to some people suspecting who might end up getting that job. But yeah, the Columbus job is not for the faint of heart. For a lot of reasons. This is a team, they've got some interesting contracts, they've got some good young players, some good players who aren't quite as young, and I do think you can cobble together a good team with the right moves. Obviously, an Elvis trade is likely. We'll see how it turns out. So the PWHL, I remember when the PWHL was announced, there were people who said, "Oh, it'll never work. Nobody's going to watch women's sports. It's money losing event, and it's going to be that." And personally, I still think it's odd that they haven't had jerseys with a logo, and they don't have like names and all this for the teams. It's just the city name. And then, of course, the jerseys sold out right away. I don't know if this was necessarily a manufacturing issue. Maybe they underestimated demand. I know previous women's leagues, jerseys could be had after those leagues were out of business. You were able to find jerseys. I know I looked. I know when the CWHL went under, I was like, well, I could get a Montreal or a Calgary jersey, but they still wanted $120, and I thought the league just collapsed. $120 for a jersey. At any rate, the PWHL, this league that there were some who said would never draw the attention and wasn't going to make the money, and it was going to be a money loser, that hasn't been the case. And when they opened up the ticket sales for Bell Center for the game in Montreal, they sold out fast. Those tickets sold out very, very quickly. Now, they're going to set a new attendance record for the PWHL, and of course for seeing a women's professional hockey game live and all that, which the league has set those records multiple times this year. But it does feel like there's a lot of excitement. It feels like there's a group of people who are really, really interested in the PWHL and everything going on with it. And it does feel like it's a group that's not necessarily going to have a lot of overlap with the NHL. So I do think this is something that can work. And I think this is as we get closer to the end of the first season for the PWHL, I think it can be seen as only a success. So I'm very, very happy to see what's happened with the PWHL. I'm glad that people are finding an alternative. And I mean, it's cheap tickets, comparatively speaking, with NHL tickets, obviously. And the hockey's been pretty good. So it is nice to see the Bell Center sell out and women's hockey thriving currently. And again, then the question comes up of expansion. Where do you go next? What do you do? The key thing is not to expand too quickly, not to end up making it so that now you're not making money because now your travel costs have gone through the roof, and maybe you water down the product a little bit. So I don't know when the expansion is going to take place. I would think it will. I would think that you're going to add probably, I would think 4 teams when they do expand. And I would think those 4 would probably be out west. I would think Vancouver would probably get a chance. I would think Seattle might get a chance because they're right next to each other. And of course, you'd kind of have to have a team in Los Angeles, wouldn't you? So just 3 locations just off the top of my head. And of course, Calgary's shown that they'll support women's hockey before. So we'll see how it all turns out. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.